Thank you, Laura and Rima and Eno, for that focus. Um, every time I come to share my screen, I forget how to do it. And I've been doing this for more than a year. You'd think I'd get it by now. This week, I was thinking about the coming up on a year and a half, almost 2 years of doing this new COVID-y life. And in many ways, it's been a pretty rough time, which I think can be beneficial in that it forces us to grow and change. But one of the benefits, I think personally, in going through this and continuing to live in this somewhat different world is that I've had the opportunity to simplify my life. It seems like a couple of years ago, there was always something going on and lots to do every evening, and schedules just seemed to get fuller and fuller. And then with this gargantuan change, suddenly, in many ways, our schedules were simplified. And I've noticed among my friends that as we kind of approach what's likely to be our new normal, living alongside COVID, kind of like we live alongside the flu, that they have taken the opportunity to either make their lives more simple or to keep them simple, to not add some things back in, um, to not let their schedules get crazy busy out of control. And so I thought, by way of discussion this morning for our topic, we would talk exactly about that. How have you simplified your life lately? At least for me personally, it's pretty easy for me to complicate things, to think of all the nuances and different areas of my life that can quite easily be overcomplicated. Um, I I think looking back over the last year or so, focusing on um, this lifetime series on love that I'm doing, this has been an attempt to simplify what it means, at least for me, to follow Jesus. To really boil it down to focusing just on one thing, to focus on love. And love can look many different ways, but really it's pretty simple. It's to do one thing. And this current, I guess it's a series within a series on looking at how we live out love in relation to God, to ourselves, and to others. It is an attempt, again, just to simplify. If we live out love with God, what does it look like? I think it probably looks like gratitude, like thanking God and living that out corporately together. When we think about loving ourselves, what does that look like? I think it looks like a commitment to our own wellness, to our own growth. Um, to have that simple stance for me um, has been a relief, because while if you ask the average person on the street what it means to follow Jesus or to be a Christian, you're going to get a lot of answers. And in my own past life, it seems like there are lots of rules and things you should be doing and things you probably ought to be doing, even if you maybe shouldn't be doing them. And then there's plenty of optional things that would be good to do if you had the time, and then a long, long list of things you shouldn't do. Um, and so it's my hope in focusing on love and how we live it out to simplify all of that, kind of the way, for good or ill, that the last couple of years has simplified our lives, to strip away all the things that aren't necessary and to put in the things that feed our souls, that give us life. And so I wanted to pause for a moment. I had another thing I was going to do if we were meeting in person, but we're not, because finding a location to meet all together is a bit challenging. So I wanted to pause, take an intermission, and reflect on this relationship between how we approach God, with gratitude, with a thanking heart, and what that means for our living out love within ourselves, apart from what it means to live in relationship, to live out love with other people around us. How does this straight up and down relationship, um, what becomes of that? And so today, in talking about how we live out love every day, I wanted to uh, look at wellness through gratitude, and just some of the ways that I think we can live out a commitment to wellness by uh, a persistent focus on gratitude in our relationship with God. The first is about wellness of our hearts. If you were a kid like me, then there was probably a time that you built some kind of fort. I would drag a blanket over the back of the couch and put some chairs and, make a little fort thing. Sometimes my brother-in-law would make a giant pillow fort where it was all just pillows off the couch. And it's a weird thing to do as a kid, but I think kids often feel very out of control and afraid of what's going on in the world. And so it's a pretty easy physical way to make a safe space where you can just be and not have to worry about, I don't know, whatever scary things are going on in the world getting you. And as we transition to adulthood, it's often that we walk out into a big, scary world and don't have a lot of safe places to be and to exist confidently. And this verse in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7 stands out to me as a way in which we can not be afraid, but instead live out love. It says, "For God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." And what's interesting to me is this verse pairs these three things together: power, love, and self-control. And so you're probably familiar with the Greek word that's translated power. It's the word we get dynamite from, dunamos. It means it takes effect. It matters in the world. It changes things. The spirit that God gives us that lives inside us is one that changes things, specifically through love. Love changes the world, and it might not change the world in huge ways overnight. But I would be willing to bet money, and I'm not a betting money kind of guy. I would be willing to bet money that you can think of a way that one person showed you love in a small way, and it changed your life forever. You still remember the instance and the person and what they said or what they did to show love to you. And we live out this love regardless of the people around us. It really is about our own personal choices to live out love, to change the world, power, love, and self-control. And when we live this out, when we are dedicated to living a life of love, regardless of the people around us, it conquers fear. We don't have to be overwhelmed by what's going on in the world because we can take action. We can live out love, regardless of those around us. We can have a measure of control, a measure of creating a safe little bubble around us, kind of like a pillow fort. And so for me personally, when faced with a difficult situation, we can take action through love to combat our fear in whatever situation is going on in our lives. As overwhelming as it may seem, it's easy to be paralyzed into inaction. But if we can choose a path of love, practical, realistic, in a person's life love, then it gives us a measure of control. It gives us an action plan that, in whatever seemingly magical way, makes the scary thing seem less scary because we have a plan and we're dedicated to the thing that God calls us to do, to live out love. It seems like a big task to use love to combat fear, but it very much comes out in small practical ways with people. If there's somebody that you're having a difficult time with, to take small steps to show them love, to just address the situation. Hey, this isn't going the way I was hoping it would. Can we talk? To do little things just to make their life a little bit easier is a way that difficult relationship or the overwhelming fear of an unknown future can be tamed and can give us a path forward. Wellness of our hearts, I believe, comes through dynamic love within ourselves, regardless of what the other person does. Love flowing from the spirit that God gives us. Wellness of our minds is a little bit trickier. The other day, we were walking through Target and I saw a mom pushing a cart that had at least 4 children in it. This is not them. This is a picture I found online, but she had 4 kids in a basket And I think there were one or two trailing her, and I think they were all hers. And she was trying to do some shopping in Target. And just seeing that for a few minutes, I was like exhausted. Just, I can't imagine being that mom existing in the world and all of the things that she juggles. It's quite easy for us to get overwhelmed with our responsibilities, with the pressures of trying to make our way in the world, and also, if we're lucky, to care for the people around us. It can be overwhelming for not just for our hearts, but also for our minds. In Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7, Paul gives us this. I kind of want to slap Paul for this verse because it sounds so simple on paper and is so difficult to live out. Do not be anxious about anything. Oh, okay, thanks, Paul. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. What I love about this verse is that Paul is saying, if you want to overcome the anxiety of your minds, be in a state of prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. It's directly tying this idea of our approach to God being one of thanks, of gratitude, with a practical way we can live out love for ourselves. And he says, if you do this, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And this very much speaks to that beam of the cross, our approach to God being one of gratitude, directly affecting our own personal growth. If we're interested in living out a life that is free of anxiety, then we approach God with gratitude in every situation, and that lack of anxiety, that peace, is borne out in our lives in a way that is beyond understanding. It doesn't make a lot of sense that if we want to be less anxious, then we just are grateful for whatever's going on. But Paul is saying here that's exactly how it works. When we approach God with gratitude, then peace is the way we begin to live in our lives. So we can thank God to calm our minds. Again, it sounds so simple to say it on paper, and it's so difficult to live out. I have found that when a situation is particularly difficult or overwhelming mentally for me, if I can be grateful, maybe not for this exact situation, but for some aspect of my life at the moment, then the whole situation is put in context. Because even when situations are overwhelming to us, we often have more to be grateful for than we are stressed out about. And the more gratitude we practice, the calmer our minds become, regardless of the chaos of the world around us. Wellness of our minds comes through thanking God always. And the other area I want to talk about that we often don't talk about, but I think it's very important, it's wellness of our bodies. So we talked about our hearts and minds, and that's usually where we stop, but also wellness of our bodies is critical. If you're like me, that when you get home from work or shopping or whatever it is you're doing, you just kind of want to crash, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of energy left. It seems like our bodies are often drained by all of the responsibilities and tasks and stuff we have going on in our daily lives. And so when you get home, it just seems like a really easy thing to do, to lay down, watch a show, or turn off the lights and just be done for the day. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 and 20, it's Paul again with this challenging verse. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. I think in our society, it's easy to think of our relationship with God as being one of our minds, of the things that we believe or agree to, or one of our hearts, of how we relate to other people, relate to God, being very much a heart thing. I think it's a different, entirely challenging thing to think about our relationship with God through our bodies. But I've personally found it very meaningful to think of how we use our bodies, the things we do with our bodies, as a way to express love and thanksgiving to God. Maybe there's a physical activity that you really like to do. It might not be running. I'm not a runner. I don't like to run unless there's a bear chasing me. But there might be something that you can do. Dancing in your seat, singing to music, giving people that you know and love hugs. These are all bodily practices of thanksgiving and gratitude that honor God, that I think are maybe the most critical way we can express a loving relationship with God. And it's my hope that we intentionally thank God with our bodies. It can be celebrating with good food practices, not just eating to survive, but eating to live in community with each other, to fuel our bodies and to celebrate the bodies that God has given us and blessed us with. It can be many other physical activities, finding something fun to do, going on a bike ride. Anything that you do with your body can be intentionally done as a gratitude practice for God. And I would encourage not just myself, but everyone to find some little way to use your body as a means of giving thanks to the God who has embodied us, who also came in a body and shared with us bodily. Wellness of our body comes through intentional, and I would even say daily practice. So these are some ways that, at least personally, I've attempted to live out a grateful heart in a relationship with God that doesn't have to do necessarily with anyone around me. To let love combat our fears, to thank God, to calm our minds, and to intentionally thank God with our bodies. So this was a pause talking about the vertical up and down relationship we have with God, simply. That we approach God with thanksgiving as our primary way of loving and living out love in relationship with God, and to assume an attitude that we will grow, that life will change for us, and allowing and welcoming that change as a way to live out love for ourselves. But in the coming weeks, as we lead into Advent, I want to talk about how we live out love with the people around us, specifically through two ways that we'll talk about in the future, and that represents the crossbar of the cross, and all of this being a symbol of how we live out love every day, in relationship with God, in relationship with others, and in relationship with ourselves. So may you combat your fears with dynamic love. May you find peace in your mind as you practice gratitude to God. May you intentionally thank God for and with your body. And may your personal wellness flow from a grateful heart.